Prince William of Gloucester was the world's favorite royal. The tall, handsome, and daring prince seemed like a movie star more than a royal. Sadly, that only made his tragic end in front of 30,000 horrified onlookers all the more devastating. So, who really was the other Prince William? From his reckless streak to his doomed love story, let's find out. At the time of his birth, he was fourth in line to become King of England. The royal family rejoiced at the birth of a new son. After years of service in France, William's father, Prince Henry, had been able to return to be there for his birth. Then, just a few months later, he was torn away yet again. Henry returned home, and World War II ended a few years later. Though nearly 20 years younger, William was quite close with his cousin, Princess Elizabeth. He acted as page boy at her wedding when he was just 7 years old. A few years later, he attended her coronation when she became Queen Elizabeth II. What's more, her son Charles absolutely idolized his older cousin. Tall and arrogantly handsome, everyone called him warm, tender-hearted, and generous to a fault. He was fiercely loyal to his friends, particularly those who were ill, unpopular with others, or even downright embarrassing. Though Prince William had a good heart, he was still a prince. He grew up as the golden child for an entire kingdom, and it went to his head. He could be tiresomely selfish, according to his biographer. An adventurous boy, Prince William soon grew into some extremely dangerous hobbies. From racing cars to flying planes, everyone in England heard about the daredevil prince's voice. Pretty soon, people started calling him the royal family's own James Bond. Though princes like William customarily entered military service, he was far too independent for a uniform. Instead, he became just the second royal ever to work in civil service. He worked for a merchant bank, then became a diplomat. William still had the same adventurous streak, and he wanted to see the world. He took a post in Lagos, then a few years after that, transferred to the British Embassy in Tokyo. William's mother demanded that he have a doctor take a look at him before he left for Tokyo. He likely expected a clean bill of health while he was in for a rude awakening. The doctor noted that William had suffered from jaundice for several months. The prince's skin also blistered if exposed to too much sunlight. The doctor told William that he had porphyria. If that's not ringing a bell, that's the same disease that doctors believe drove King George III mad. Since the condition is hereditary, any of George's family could have had it, and William was a direct descendant. Doctors eventually confirmed the diagnosis, providing more evidence that porphyria had been haunting the royal family for centuries, perhaps even as far back as Mary, Queen of Scots. Naturally, William flew himself to Tokyo in one of his many personal aircraft. The man was still a prince, after all. After a grueling 16-hour flight from London, he arrived to find freedom like he had never really known before. Away from the standard royal duties and protocol, William could live something of a normal life. William was a working stiff now, but he hadn't given up on his daredevil lifestyle. He still loved fast cars and faster planes, but his reckless ways meant he often flirted with disaster. Once, while in Japan, he took some friends on a flight in one of his planes. Safety wasn't always the #1 thing on a man like William's mind. He performed his regular checks before taking off that day, but he did miss something. Just as his plane reached the air, one of the doors suddenly burst open. And fast, William asked his friend to hold on for as long as he could. The prince then performed an emergency stall in mid-air. Just as alarms started ringing, he slowed the plane enough that his friend could slam the door shut and fasten it securely. In Tokyo, William couldn't be further from his family, and that meant no stuffy relatives keeping an eye on his activities. He was seen with many different girls on various nights out on the town. No surprise, William didn't struggle to find female company. But then one day, William found the woman he wanted to spend the rest of his life with. Born in Hungary, model Zsuzui Starkloff moved to Japan to be the face of Revlon's Japanese advertising campaign. 8 years older than William, she had already married, had a daughter, and divorced. As one of the most visible models in the country, she flew in the highest social circles. In 1968, one of Starkloff's upper-class friends threw a costume ball. Starkloff had already heard about her dashing young British prince in town, so she told her friend to invite him. And in case he didn't think her intentions were clear, she wrote him a flirty note. "Dear Prince Charming, we hear a party isn't a party without you. Besides that, I'm missing a slipper. Signed, Cinderella." It's not hard to see what William saw in Starkloff. One of her former business associates described her as very beautiful, with large brown eyes and long auburn hair. She was a good dresser and carried herself gracefully. She conversed in flawless Japanese and was very clearly a clever woman. But would it be enough to appease William's family? William's early days with Starkloff were a whirlwind. They rented a secret love nest near the ocean, and for a painfully short time they could pretend like they were any other couple. William adored cooking for Zsuzui and made her breakfast every morning. She could scarcely believe the man was a prince, but she'd soon receive a painful reminder. William and Starkloff could pretend like they were a normal couple for a while, but not forever. William quickly realized that he wanted to spend his life with her, but he knew it wasn't that simple. When he raised the courage, he sent a photograph of her to his family back home in order to gauge their reaction. It was not good. William's parents told him that Starkloff was quite beautiful, but he could read between the lines. Had they been able to say what they were thinking, their letter might have begun with, "Are you completely mad?" Starkloff was Hungarian, of common birth, divorced, and already had a child. To say they didn't approve of the match is putting it lightly. Despite the royal family's misgivings about Starkloff, she had honest intentions, and her love for William of Gloucester was true. Years later, Starkloff reminisced, "My relationship with William had nothing to do with his title or me wanting to be a princess. That wasn't what it was about, and William knew that." Not long after William's letter, he received a visitor from back home. His cousin, Princess Margaret. Though she was ostensibly there on a diplomatic trip, William knew exactly why she had come. She was there to talk some sense into him. Margaret was the perfect choice after all. She knew his struggle better than anyone. William was far from the first royal to fall for someone beneath their station. When Margaret was younger, she had fallen in love with her father's equity, Peter Townsend. She had wanted to marry him, but he had been 17 years older and divorced with 2 children. The royals knew she was the perfect person to remind William of his duty. William could have simply hidden Starkloff from his cousin and carried on their affair in secret. However, he seems to have trusted Margaret because he introduced the two of them. When the princess first met Starkloff, a look of genuine surprise swept across her face. William's love was clearly not who she was expecting. During her visit, Margaret and William spent many hours talking alone together. They never revealed what they talked about. When Starkloff asked William what the princess thought of her, he simply replied, "She said you were very nice and very interesting, and she doesn't blame me for falling in love with you." But what he didn't say spoke volumes. Starkloff claimed she already knew that their love was doomed, but William wasn't ready to give up on it just yet. Though Margaret didn't directly encourage William to pursue his relationship with Starkloff, she did leave him with one small glimmer of hope. The royal family's attitudes were changing. Upon her return home, she wrote to William, telling him to wait a bit and see how everything looks once he got back to England. Though their days were numbered, at least William and Starkloff got to enjoy a few more months of bliss. After Tokyo, they traveled all over the U.S. together, before ending up in New York. William told Starkloff to wait there while he returned to England too. As Margaret told him, "See how everything looked." Prince Henry and Princess Alice welcomed Starkloff into their home. She found them kind and accommodating, but from the moment she arrived, She felt the distance between them. They were cordial, but they would never accept her as their daughter-in-law. That part might have hurt, but at least it wasn't a surprise. However, this was also the first time she'd ever seen her William back home with his family. She was shocked to find that he was a totally different person. Zsuzui Starkloff had known William, the dashing young diplomat who flew planes and cooked breakfast. This was the first time she met Prince William of Gloucester. Seeing this side of him confirmed what she already knew. Though William was, as Starkloff put it, too much of a man to be happy as a prince, he was also too much of a prince to give it up to be a normal man. Nearly the entire royal family disapproved of William and Starkloff's relationship, but none more than Queen Elizabeth II's husband, Prince Philip. He was concerned about the damage to the royal family's reputation from yet another scandalous love affair. He wouldn't have to worry much longer. Tragedy was around the corner. Prince William and Zsuzui Starkloff eventually went their separate ways, but they never truly gave up on each other. Before parting, William had a signet ring made for her embossed with a W as a promise. Though he could never go against his family's wishes, he would never forget about her. And if the winds ever changed, he would come back for her. Around 1970, William's father suffered a series of strokes that left him confined to a wheelchair. As his eldest son, it fell to William to take over his father's affairs. He still wore the ring he made for Starkloff, but his father's health only reaffirmed his choice of duty over love. William left diplomatic service to, as he put it, take on his full-time job as a royal prince. He would never be with Zsuzui Starkloff again. Though William no longer had the same freedom he enjoyed in Japan, he was still as adventurous as always. He got right back to racing anything with an engine. In 1972, he signed up to compete for the Goodyear International Air Trophy. He was to pilot the aircraft along with his friend, Viral Mitchell, who would join him for the ride. A crowd of 30,000 people watched excitedly as William of Gloucester's plane took off, only for their excitement to turn to horror. Almost as soon as he got in the air, William's plane banked steeply to the left. The abrupt turn caused his plane to lose altitude, and it sent it careening straight towards a tree. William tried to bring the aircraft under control, but he had already lost too much altitude. His plane hit a tree and tore the left wing clean off. By then, it was too late. The aircraft flipped over before crashing into an earthen bank near the airfield and bursting into flames. A group of small boys who happened to be near the crash site rushed to the raging inferno to render aid, but their efforts were in vain. One of the boys later told BBC News, "We tried to break into the plane's doors and then tried to break it in half by pulling at the tail, but it was no good. We had to go back because of the heat." Though emergency crews rushed to the scene, there was nothing they could do either. It took 2 hours to get the blaze under control. The following day, coroners inspected the remains and through dental records confirmed what everyone already knew. Prince William and Viral Mitchell had died in the crash. Mitchell had been 43 and William had been just 30 years old. William's mother was so distraught at her son's passing that she didn't have the heart to tell her husband what had happened. She feared that, in his poor health, he wouldn't be able to bear the news. In her biography, she confessed that he must have learned about the tragedy from the television. Prince Charles took William's loss particularly hard. He'd always idolized his older cousin, who had always seemed invincible. He never forgot about William, and 10 years later, when Princess Diana gave birth to his oldest son, he already knew exactly what to name him. Even to the very end, William was still thinking of Zsuzui Starkloff. In fact, he had actually invited her to join him at the race that day, but she had been previously indisposed, but turned out to be a mercy, as it spared her from watching the love of her life go up in flames. And in case she still worried he might have moved on, he left one final heartbreaking tribute to her. The remains inside the aircraft were too disfigured for anyone to properly identify, but there was one item that survived the crash. The ring that William had made for Starkloff still sat around his finger. Even on his very last day, William was still thinking about Zsuzui Starkloff. Starkloff eventually married, but she never let go of her daring prince. She lived until May 2020, when she lost her fight with cancer, but for all those years she still wore William's ring around her neck.